Keith is the kind of leader that from the minute he walked in the door, you could tell that he did have a vision in mind, but he's also the kind of leader who is willing to allow some time to pass and allow people to be okay with growing as professionals and making our school the best place that it can be. He wants us all to grow as a collective whole and really just do what's best for kids.
I think what helps it to be successful is the structure provided by MeetingWise or DataWise. Yet we do make it our own. It can feel really mechanical, but personalities at the table bring it out. We did a lot of tee-up for the entire building before even bringing it to grade 5. We completed I think it's steps 1 through 3 as an entire building, and then picked up there with grade 5 to move forward.
So DataWise really, now that we're involved in it, it really was the next step for our building. Time as a teacher is always of the essence, and we always need more time, which is why our grade level meetings we're looking for a way to be as efficient as possible, and to really just get down to the meat of why we're meeting right from the beginning. We really want to turn into student work. Anything that we were doing was based on data, whether it's informal data or assessment data that we're collecting. Keith's vision has allowed for that, so I think this really supports that, and that we come together as teams. We're a very collaborative building as well, so this is just a way for us to base our decisions on data and move forward from there in the best interest of our students.
Understanding sort of the swoosh and understanding the steps that you take, starting with looking at data in kind of a raw way and then taking it to the classroom and then getting to work with each other is invaluable. I really think that it's a nice structured way of looking at needs in the classroom and then breaking it into steps and how to tackle these little problems that come up in a really useful and effective way, and then being able to be in each other's classrooms and give each other feedback and look at the data together is really amazing. I think that we've grown a lot and we've seen a lot in our own teaching and in sort of what the students can do through this lens of a structured process.
My team consists of myself and Lauren Delon and Christy Byrne, and we work really well together. We have a really open relationship. We bounce ideas off each other all the time. I think we have such a strong working relationship because we trust each other completely. We also admire each other so much and respect everybody's ability and what we can do, but we always do it with a sense of humor.
They're an outstanding team who collaborates together regularly. They're easygoing, yet highly invested in their kids and are willing to take on new challenges and learning about their own practice. Also, it was a unique opportunity because there are 3 teachers who know the entire grade, so that they can think about their work, not just about their own classroom, but they can think about the entire grade's work.
So based on some of our pre- and post-assessment data from some of our reading TC units, Lauren, Christy, and we sat with Allison as well, and we noticed that when it came to especially complex, often multi-step questions about their reading, students were either skipping part of the question, or they were answering the wrong question, or they just didn't really know how to approach answering these complex questions.
We looked at their NWEA scores, and then we had given a pre-assessment and realized that a lot of the students on that pre-assessment from those TC units, students weren't even really answering the question that they were given, but rather just pulling kind of keywords or phrases that they knew of, like theme, for instance, and just writing about that instead of taking it like a step-by-step approach and taking the question apart and answering each part of the question. At first, it was pretty overwhelming because there was so much data, and we were just getting used to the system at first and had to kind of take it apart and look at it. Eventually, we determined that there was a student-centered problem with how students were answering a complex question or how they weren't actually answering the question.
Our teachers are becoming more comfortable using the data from NWEA and putting it alongside things like our running record and realizing that one data point doesn't stand alone, that we need to be looking across data points.
We were getting a little bit frustrated, like, we're doing a good job teaching, but why isn't this translating? And we realized that we actually have never explicitly taught these students how to approach a problem, how to even read a question or ask, and what you can do when it's challenges you can use.
I think for me, it was when I gave a pre-assessment and realized that students were pretty much just, I guess, dancing around the question. And even though a lot of them had some great thoughts, they weren't really focused on what the question was asking. And then once I realized that, I started looking more closely at some of their work in social studies and reading workshop and realized that with certain students, I definitely saw a pattern. So that's allowed me to kind of look more deeply at those students' work and see where they need some extra support.
So I am lucky enough to have been on the school growth team for the last 2 years, and I've been involved with the whole idea of instructional rounds here at Branchville, and I've learned all along the way about the spirit of people going into each other's classrooms, and I really learned that it's all about really helping the kids. It's coming from a growth perspective, not a judgment perspective, and I really got to witness that and be part of that firsthand. At Branchville, we're very relaxed and welcoming to people coming into our classroom because it happens regularly, whether it's for TC days or math instructional days or instructional rounds or just getting into a colleague's classroom if you hear about something great that they're doing and you want to share. So I think here at Branchville, we're all pretty comfortable because we realize that we have so much to learn from others and that there's so much to be learned from the students in our classrooms. Everybody feels comfortable now that they know they're not being judged.
For me, that's been kind of a great tool when thinking about students and not jumping all the way up on the ladder to conclusions and evaluating their student work more closely and looking at some testing scores before I make drastic conclusions about their ability. So to stay low means just to have an open mind to kind of think about what might be happening before you jump to identifying a problem.
Since we started with DataWise as a building, even though people aren't as familiar with it, it's just the idea of not jumping up the ladder. So I think it really is, we're grounding our decisions and just the way that we talk about student work and what our students are doing. We're not making assumptions, and we're grounding it in evidence, which is seen through all of the work that we've been examining.
So just giving them some more opportunities to practice this, maybe some more for homework, maybe a little bit more that we embed in to some independent work is something that we're going to look into. So we have about 4 or 5 progress monitoring pieces that we are looking at, and we've already broken them apart into some different piles of noticing. So we kind of noticed that some students were really using all of the structures and the tips that we had given them in terms of answering questions, echoing questions, using text evidence, saying more in their own words. And so with those students, giving them this practice really made them so much stronger. And then there's a pile of students who are on their way, like they're really using some of the structures, but maybe forgetting 1 or 2 steps. And then there's a pile or a bucket of students who really just need to keep practicing. We need to give them some more opportunities with this. We need to maybe teach in with some other structures that might help them break it apart even further.
always looking for ways to look at what students are currently doing, celebrate their strengths, but then also look for next steps for them.
But we will sit together and plan out a next step lesson that we do maybe in read aloud, or as a little add-in lesson, maybe a repertoire lesson that we do in reading. And so we will do that probably in the next few weeks, to sit down again and talk about our data, and then talk about what we will do with it.
How to answer it, for instance, when they came to it in any sort of problem, whether it was math, social studies, or reading workshop, or even writing, and teaching them that this was kind of like a real life skill.
So I'm thinking about the swoosh as, as it's intended to be this like recursive problem solving process. As we go through this experience with grade 5, is how we can use some of the structures and some of the spirit of the sort of swoosh that is intended, at least as we're doing now, to do whole grade level sort of pattern and problem solving. Like, what does that mean for when we're troubleshooting an individual student? Like, how does that conversation about an individual resemble the work that we're doing when we think about a whole grade?